The U.S. education system is under grave danger. There's been a significant infiltration in our schools by leftists in China, which is impacting academic freedom and integrity. Now, the woke left's influence has driven an emphasis on identity politics and ideological conformity, thus limiting diverse viewpoints and free speech. At the same time, China's investments and establishment of Confucius institutes on campuses have raised concerns about propaganda and undue influence by the Chinese Communist Party. Yeonmi Park, the famous North Korean defector, went on multiple shows warning us from this exact thing, and she's citing her experience at Columbia University as proof of this massive threat on our entire system. But before I delve deeper into it, watch Park talk about the North Korean and hardships that she had on her journey to freedom.
Just walk us back, though. You had a brutal past. You got out of North Korea, but sort of frying pan into the fire. You went to China. They made a sex slave out of you. You went through Mongolia to get to freedom. Mongolia is a very interesting country. It's a free market country. Tell us just a wee bit about your past.
Yeah, I was born in North Korea, and when I was 13 years old, we couldn't find any more dragon flies or grasshoppers. That's what I ate to survive. And at 13, I was looking for a bowl of rice. So my mother and I escaped to China. As soon as I arrived in China, I saw my mother being and then they sold my mom into sex slavery for $65. And they sold me just over $20 because I was a virgin and child. 2 years later in China, I met missionaries from South Korea, and they told me that I could be free in South Korea. And we asked them, how do we do that? And he said, we can walk across a frozen Gobi Desert into Mongolia from China. So we did that, and by some miracle, I survived in the desert. And from Mongolia, they helped me to go to South Korea. And that's how I became free.
So somehow God was looking after you.
Yes.
Really?
He did.
It's a great story. You know, I don't want to dwell on it, but the Mongolia part, another segment sometime, but they're pretty good. It's pretty good government.
Yeah.
Pretty good free market government. So thank you for all that. I'm glad it's a blessing that you made it through.
That's the sad reality of the situation in this part of the world. North Korea is ruled by the Communist Party, which means that the economy is highly centralized and inefficient, leading to widespread poverty and chronic food shortages. The average North Korean faces daily struggles to secure basic necessities such as food, clean water, and healthcare. It is reported that the famine conditions in the 1990s resulted in the deaths of 1 million people, and malnutrition remains a persistent problem. The UN estimates, and I quote, between 2019 and 2021, 42% of North Koreans were malnourished. Basic freedoms are severely restricted as well, where citizens are not allowed to travel freely within the country or abroad, and communication with the outside world is heavily monitored and controlled. Access to information is strictly limited to state propaganda, with foreign media and the internet largely inaccessible. Defectors from North Korea typically cross into China with the help of smugglers, and in case they get caught, they'd face harsh penalties. Once they cross into China, life doesn't get much better because defectors lack legal status and are never given a refugee status, thus facing the constant threat of capture and repatriation. If returned to North Korea, they face severe punishment, including torture, imprisonment, and execution. Female defectors are particularly vulnerable to human trafficking, such as Park's case. Many are sold into forced marriages or prostitution. They have little recourse due to their illegal status and fear of repatriation.
Now, at Columbia, you're writing, these kids want to be oppressed. They love socialism. They love communism. They complain about capitalism. They say the problem is white people. I mean, I didn't know Columbia used to be a very good, school. And you're saying it's a lot of drivel, a lot of nonsense.
It's beyond nonsense. It's a madness. What they're saying is, they talk about oppression. They keep telling me they're oppressed. And America is horrible, that we need to destroy this country. I was asking them, what about America that you hate so much? They say we have inequality in this country. In North Korea, we don't have inequality. We are dying from starvation. The sign of inequality means there's a room for rise, that you can innovate, you can get rewarded. Like AOC says, what's yours is mine. That's what Columbia professor is saying. We need to steer from all these rich people, and everything should be free, and we need to destroy the country in the name of equity and fairness. And that same ideology made into North Korea what it is today. And that's why I escaped from that country.
That leads to socialism. That leads to communism. I mean,
that's socialism.
What you hear, yeah.
Yeah.
And when did that ever succeed? Did you ever ask them for specific, just today, Is Russia such a great place? Even China, which was good, now it's going down. Is Venezuela such a great place? Is Cuba such a great place? I don't get it.
I asked them, like, look at the examples, that there are millions of people are suffering because of the same ideology, and they said, I'm a threat. I'm a brainwashed puppet of right-wingers. And
You're a threat.
Yes.
You're a brainwashed
Yes.
puppet? Really? Not them, you?
And they don't let me speak because Colombia needs to have something called a safe space. And we cannot have diversity of opinions. It's all about diversity of skin color. So that's not a university, it's a court. It's the exact same thing in North Korea. They put you in the classroom and they brainwash you. And I saw that in America, they're doing the exact same thing. They put us in the classroom and professors were brainwashing to hate America.
The professors too, not just the kids, but the professors.
Everybody.
Did you take any economics?
I was taking some economic classes and then human rights and science and Columbia core curriculum.
I mean, microeconomics, just supply and demand. A good socialist should understand that. Maybe not.
Right.
Macro is deadly. Macro is where you go way left off into the wild blue yonder.
That's
what you heard.
Yeah.
And now you're fighting it how?
I'm fighting to tell Americans to understand real tyranny and let them know this is the greatest country in human history. It's not a joke. This is a miracle. I don't even know how this country exists. But we have some lucky we got this country while destroying it. And I think they don't understand how many people, like there are 300,000 nursing defectors in China. Their organs are harvested out of them. And people denouncing slavery all day in America, but they do not want to stand up for North Korean people and the Uyghurs in China.
The greatest country in history of history.
Yeah.
I happen to agree with you.
It's fair to say that she had more core American values than those on the woke left. The reason why our universities are in the state they are today is because of the communist wannabe people that infiltrated our educational system. Many major U.S. colleges and universities have increasingly integrated social justice topics into their curriculum, which is not necessarily bad, but the manner in which these topics are presented is usually one-sided, promoting a leftist ideological perspective. And this is all while sidelining foundational principles that have long been integral to American society, such as individualism, free speech, and meritocracy. Courses that are heavily centered around concepts like systematic oppression, privilege, and identity politics are presented in a way that frames American history and culture predominantly in terms of their flaws and injustices. Additionally, the emphasis on social justice topics leads to the marginalization of core subjects that are crucial for a well-rounded education. Courses in American history, civics, and Western philosophy, which traditionally promote an understanding of individual rights, democratic principles, and the rule of law, are often downplayed or reinterpreted through the lens of critical theory. The result is an educational environment where students are less empowered to diverse viewpoints and more inclined to adopt an activist-oriented mindset, in addition to perpetuating victimhood and resentment rather than encouraging critical thinking and a balanced understanding of the nation's complexities. This ideological tilt is creating an environment where students are feeling pressured to conform to a specific set of beliefs, rather than exploring a broad spectrum of ideas. The suppression of free speech and the discouragement of debate limits intellectual growth and understanding different ideas, thus universities become echo chambers where only certain viewpoints are tolerated.
You look at one gender fluid person and you called him he, and you see him have a meltdown or they have a meltdown in front of you.
Yeah.
And you actually feel bad for this person.
Yeah, because for the first time I was realizing this person was also like brainwashed like me when I was in North Korea. I believed that Kim Jong-il could read my mind because that was a brainwashing that I had to believe to survive. Now this person thinks their oppression is somehow their pronouns.
Crazy,
Yes.
right? I mean, I think it's crazy and I'm embarrassed. I want to bring you to this excerpt from your book. Professors and administrators spoke to us like children, and so many students acted accordingly. People my age, literally double my size, who appear to be incredibly fit and well-fed, sometimes reduced to tears discussing feelings they harbored that appeared to have no possible connection to anything they were supposed to be learning about. A lecture on Homer would end up with a white student crying about colonialism. A class on government would take the form of two students trying to outdo each other in LGBTQ allies. In the months I spent studying criminal justice in South Korea, I never learned that injustices could be fought by spinning new ones out of thin air. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's like, in some sense, like not having a problem is an actual problem. They are making problem out of nowhere, creating injustice out of thin air. And that's the injustice they're fighting here. That's so-called social justice is all about fighting 10,000 different pronouns.
It's amazing you could overcome what you overcome and have this type of logic. So you're worried about China and China's influence, especially on colleges. We were able to put this number together. So from 2017 to 2022, listen to how much they've contributed to Harvard: 79 million, Stanford 44 million, Columbia 45, University of Chicago 42, MIT 34, and Berkeley 21, and 3 million at University of Michigan. What do they want? What do you worry about?
This is where Chinese government bought all these institutions, not just education, even Hollywood. Last year when my first book was trying to become a movie, and the producer sent me a script. In the script it says that China was my promised land. China gave me a safety and refugee, and I called the producer, what are you talking about? He said, this is the only way we can make a North Korean story in current Hollywood.
Are you kidding? So you have to make China look
It's
great,
a promised land.
where they were sold you as a sex slave.
Exactly.
And you escaped to South Korea and China. That's an example of what they want to buy. They want to buy the elite universities with their dollars, and you're setting up a flare.
It is crazy to see the results of the Chinese funding unfold in front of us in real time. During the Cold War, the Soviet Union engaged in extensive propaganda efforts to exploit societal divisions within the United States. This involved funding and supporting various movements and ideologies that could sow discord, promote dissent, and weaken the nation's unity from within. We later learned that this strategy was called cultural subversion due to a former KGB agent exposing it. China is doing the same in modern times, but in a more subtle way. The Chinese Communist Party is actively funding multiple U.S. colleges, with the main goal being to promote their divisive ideologies under the guise of social justice. Now, Chinese influence is expanding through funding, partnership, and the establishment of Confucius Institutes, which serves as platforms for spreading Chinese state-approved narratives and subtly promoting anti-American sentiment. Additionally, China is getting access to cutting-edge technological research and intellectual property through their funding. There have been instances where academics with ties to Chinese institutions have been found guilty in transferring sensitive information back to China, undermining U.S. national security. One of these people is Charles Lieber, who's former chemist department chair at Harvard. The New York Times reports that Charles, quote, secretly accepted money from China, which had established a government initiative, the 1,000 Talents Program, to gain access to scientific knowledge and expertise, often paying scientists lavishly. Another investigation conducted by Parents Defunding Education found that, quote, affiliations with the Chinese government in 143 schools across 4 states and Washington, D.C., adding financial exchanges between K-12 schools and the Chinese government range from a few $1,000s to, in Thomas Jefferson High School's case, more than $1 million. Disturbingly, the Chinese government's ties appear to target school districts near 20 American military bases. By infiltrating schools and universities, these efforts target the intellectual hubs where future leaders and influencers are shaped. The focus on social justice issues is particularly effective in this setting, as it taps into genuine grievances and moments for equity and rights. However, when manipulated, these movements can be steered toward extreme positions that create division rather than unity, leading to the further fragmentation of society. I'd like to know your thought on the state of our education system as well, so make sure to leave them in the comment section below.